All right, cool. So we're gonna get started a couple minutes early. Me and my friend that's here with me, we booked our flight for 2 hours from now, so it's all good. But that's why we're gonna start a couple minutes early. Hi, my name is Peter Champelli, and I'm here presenting motion graphics, animation, and modern journalism. So first, just a quick introduction of myself. I am currently a sophomore studying emerging media at Ithaca College, which is in Ithaca, New York. So yeah, now I'm at Ithaca College and studying emerging media, and I'm currently the news director for WICB, which is a radio station. I'm the web director, so doing coding for the Ithacan, which is our student newspaper. And I also work with Project Look Sharp. Project Look Sharp is an organization that does like media literacy education. So if that sounds like something you might be interested into, all this stuff I'm happy to talk about. And everything I talk about in this presentation, definitely come up and talk to me. I'd love to stay connected and just give advice. Okay, cool. So obviously we're going to be talking about motion graphics and things related to that during this presentation. But I wanted to start by talking about journalism sort of like as a whole, how it is today, and how that intersects with motion graphics. So as journalists, our number one goal is to tell the truth and to do so in a way that makes sense to the public, where they're actually taking things in and they feel like a sense of going forward with that. Everyone knows that, and that hasn't really ever changed. That's always the number one goal of journalists. But there are some things that have changed about journalism, and I think that they have changed because of like the rise of the internet and rapid advancements in technology. And these technological changes, I think, have raised a couple of different questions for journalists, pretty much anybody in the industry, so everybody in this room, and definitely the people that are currently doing professional journalism in the adult world. So the first thing that's very different about the journalism industry now is that everybody is a journalist. So everybody who has a phone or even access to a public library is engaging in journalism, usually on a daily basis. If you make a Facebook post, if you make a tweet, you are engaging in journalism. And it's a really exciting development. I think that that's why we hear about a lot of different stories now, because there's more people contributing to the media landscape. But also it's kind of scary for journalists because right now there's more content to compete with. So in my sophomore year of high school, I went to a talk given by Jim Lehrer, who was a famous TV anchor. And he talked about how right now our job as journalists has changed a little bit. We don't just have to tell the truth and to inform our audience. We also have to help our audience filter through all the like insane media to find what's actually true. And that's kind of like a different goal than really like we've been trained to do as journalism students. So that's just one question that's been raised by these changes. The second thing is kind of on the same page as this, but all these advancements have raised this question of what is journalism right now? How do we kind of factor in these things like citizen journalists and independent bloggers, and also organizations like BuzzFeed and Attention, and these places that kind of make these like poppy like videos that are supposed to inform people, but kind of also are just like, they look like commercials. Like, how do we even factor in what journalism is right now, and how to approach different types of content? So these are kind of questions looking at journalism from the industry standpoint on a very like broad spectrum, but a lot of these questions have also raised very specific questions for people working in news outlets in the professional world. And those questions relate more specifically to multimedia journalism. So multimedia journalism is kind of like a buzzword, it's kind of like a very vague term, but really what it's talking about is the convergence of different forms of media. So I talked to an IC Park School professor, so the school that I go to, and he talked about before the term multimedia journalism, the buzzword was convergence. So like before the internet, obviously there was still radio journalism and TV journalism and print, and they all existed and they all had very specific ways of telling stories that's very different from each other. So like if you read a story in print and then also listened to it on the radio, it would not feel like the same story. That's just like, they have different ways of telling the story. What the internet has done, it has allowed journalists to converge all of these together and to use the strengths of all the different mediums to tell different parts of the story, or like to use certain forms when they work better. So like, for example, if I was writing a breaking news story, I would want to do it in print. But if I was trying to tell someone's like life story in a way that's compelling and like relates to a larger narrative or something, I think that would work better in radio, because you can use the emotion in their voice, and you can also like, the narrator can bring you through the person's journey in a more conversational way, because that's just how radio is set up to function. So that's sort of how multimedia journalism has raised even more questions for the people that are currently in charge of like the big news outlets. And this specifically has raised some questions for them. So first, journalists have to ask themselves now, what is engaging? I think that this is sometimes a scary question to journalists, especially people that are studying journalism like in high school and know like journalists, our number one goal is to inform the public, to tell the truth. I think that this question is a little bit scary because we can see now with the internet that a lot of times it seems like journalists will focus more on making things engaging rather than making things as impactful and knowledge focused as possible. Just because they're forced to. Like, everyone has to make money, and I think that this is kind of a scary thing about journalism now, is it seems like people might have to answer this question about what is engaging more and more, especially because now every single citizen has the tools to make really engaging content. So, like, that's also what journalism is, or what professional journalists are competing with. But on a brighter note, it's also raising this question of having journalists develop the future of storytelling. So, like I was saying, the internet has presented us with a form, like a media, to use the different strengths of these different mediums. So, television, radio, print, use the strengths of all of these in one setting. And I think what this has done has allowed journalists to think about the most effective way to tell a story, and also has kind of pushed them to innovate in storytelling. So now we can tell more complex stories that give more detail about someone's life, or stories that can like show different aspects of what a certain issue is from different angles. And also it has helped journalists develop tools that combine video and audio and print in different ways. And I think that that's a really exciting thing about multimedia journalism, especially for us students, because right now, you and me both, we're in these student publications and in these classrooms where we're making media that's being seen by the public, but we don't have the restrictions of time and money that professional journalists are dealing with. And like, throughout high school, I was lucky enough to go to a school where we had publications, and I didn't really like see the value in that until I graduated. Luckily, I'm still doing that in college, but it's a really valuable thing to make independent media where you don't have those restrictions. So we're a part of this. We're creating the future of storytelling because of multimedia journalism. So I am going to get into motion graphics, but I wanted to stop really quick and talk a little bit more about multimedia journalism. So when I was in high school, during my senior year, we kind of like kickstarted the multimedia on our news website, and these are just some like helpful tips, I think. So if you're trying to kickstart the multimedia on any publication, you need to focus on video, audio, and photo. A lot of this is going to be kind of like repeat knowledge for you, but I think it might be helpful to some people. So, and also I'll be giving the link to this whole presentation at the end of this. So, I mean, definitely take notes. Like I learned best from taking notes, but you'll also have a copy of this. So for video, the prime, obviously the prime, or I guess the ideal method is recording with a DSLR camera, so like a Canon or a Nikon, and then editing in Adobe Premiere Pro. The Adobe Creative Suite is the best thing to invest in for any media creator, so like anyone in this room. If there's any way you can invest in that, and if you think you want to go into communications in your life, I say invest early. That allowed me to kind of like not only develop what I really was interested in from an early standpoint, but also to learn new things as I realized that I wanted to. So like the day that I wanted to learn After Effects, which is how you make motion graphics, I realized that I already had it because I had subscribed to this Creative Suite. So really, like, for anyone in this room, probably it's a great investment, the Adobe Creative Suite. So for video, record on DSLR, edit in Premiere Pro, but if you don't have those assets, because I know not everyone can, recording on a phone and then editing on your phone or in QuickTime is just as good. This is what we told our reporters, is like, while you're doing your interview for your print article, just whip out your phone for 30 seconds and take that quick video, because that gives a lot more information to the user or the reader of the article, and it also just makes your content more engaging and more readable, is to have a quick video answer for interviews. So that's just a quick way to make your content more like 21st century. Same thing with audio. Recording, the ideal is to use a Zoom microphone, so that's what I'm recording this with. It's like one of these kind of microphones. And then edit in Adobe Audition, which is, again, part of the Adobe Suite. But also, again, you can just record and edit with your phone and with QuickTime, which is the native like viewer app on a Mac. Photography is one realm that I haven't delved as deep into, but again, DSLR, Adobe Photoshop, and then I also have the display sites that have worked really well for me. These are kind of just websites where you can upload your content, and they just embed really well in like a news website format, so those are just good to know. So this last category is kind of where this presentation is headed, is the other category. So on our news website, again, we did infographics, so you can use Adobe InDesign to create custom infographics where you're doing all the design work. But you can also use this free online program called PictoChart, which will kind of like do a lot of the design for you and kind of just give you the tools to put in the content where you want to. That was very helpful for us. We could kind of like whip out quick infographics if we wanted to for a quick article. So that's good to know. Definitely look at this thing called Atavist. It's the tool we use for long-form journalism. So during our first semester, we created a super long piece about our school spirit week, where we took the reader through day by day into what exactly happened, and also gave them a lot about the backstory about our school's rivalry. So since that was such a long piece, we looked at this program Atavist, and it just it looks really nice, and we won the Multimedia Story of the Year 2 years ago for it. So definitely look at this tool. It's a very, very good tool. And finally, this is sort of what we're going to be focusing on, is interactives and video content. So look up Nightlab Timeline. It's a really cool tool. It basically lets you create an interactive timeline on a website. And also, I'll show you some examples of this if we have time at the end, because they're really cool. But yeah, Nightlab just lets you plug in dates and content, and then it creates a really nice timeline that'll just embed right into your WordPress site. And then finally, video content. So virtual reality, I think that's one field that really needs people to be innovating in and deciding how journalism could be used in that. But what I'm going to be talking about is motion graphics. So what is motion graphics? Motion graphics is a form of animation. It's sort of two-dimensional. It's very flat and poppy and colorful, and it's sort of all about bringing objects on a page to life. So one way to describe it is just the animations that you've been seeing in this presentation. So when those numbers will cycle around, it's kind of just you bring those numbers and those lines, just give them some life and some energy. So that's what motion graphics is. To sort of paint more of a picture about what this is, I'm going to play one of my favorite motion graphics videos. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's I think one of my favorite videos ever made. It's a good example of motion graphics in my opinion, because you can kind of see that it's about just bringing really simple things to life. So they were able to illustrate the idea of love and connection and abundance just with balls and lines. And I just think it's really cool. So yeah, that's what I'll be talking about more, is how motion graphics works and how it can be used in journalism. So after seeing that video, you can probably already kind of think a little bit about how you've been seeing this used in journalism. So I'm going to play a couple examples of how I've been seeing it used a lot, and then we'll talk about is this the best place for motion graphics, and is it being used to its full potential? So here's an example of a video that I think this is the place that motion graphics is used the most. Okay, cool. I'm going to pause it because it's kind of long. But obviously that's not an example of a real news video, that's The Onion. But you can kind of see that you can kind of see the type of video that I'm talking about. So it's these videos that have flashy text where some of the words are bold and some of them are maybe colorful, but it's just kind of text boom, boom, boom over video. And it's just supposed to be engaging and just make you want to watch it. And I think that's kind of how motion graphics is being used the most. So here's an example of an actual example of this, not The Onion, which is obviously like satire news. But this is an example of an actual video that's like this. This is from a group called Attention, which Attention is like one of those kind of like millennial new age journalism groups that kind of just like makes this short form content that you kind of really only see on like Facebook and Twitter in these video forms. So here's an example of that.
If we're going to allow people to smoke marijuana, are we just not going to allow them to work?
Okay, so yeah, I'll pause that. So yeah, you've definitely seen these videos probably today. They just like kind of pop up every time you scroll through Facebook, every time you scroll through Twitter. And like I've been saying, I think that that's kind of how motion graphics is being used by a lot of outlets. They're seeing this as a way to make content that's really engaging, but that doesn't actually have that much content in it. So like this, a print equivalent of this video would be like an article with literally 6 lines that doesn't really leave the reader with like that much. But if they put it into a video content, put all these like flashy graphics over it, they can make a lot of money off of it. So I think that this is kind of how a lot of outlets have been using motion graphics. But personally, I think that it has the potential for a lot more. And I think that we're the people that can bring it to that potential. So before I get more into that, I want to give a little bit more about motion graphics just as a whole. So like I said, it's a form of 2D animation, flat objects on a screen coming to life. And because of that, it really has no rules. Like you saw in the Apple video, and kind of like just the different animations in the presentation, you can just really create whatever you want, just because you're just bringing everyday objects, random shapes to life and giving them emotion, giving them energy. And because there's no rules, you can kind of tell whatever story you need to tell. And I think that that's one thing that's really unique about motion graphics. One really great thing about it is the community. So I'm completely self-taught with motion graphics. I used an online playlist on YouTube, and I just like one day was really interested, so I started watching the videos and following it. And I've only learned from online, because once you go through one of those playlists and you learn the basics, then you can kind of just start working on your own stuff. And then like when you run into pitfalls, you can just like look for an answer. And everyone in the motion graphics community is so helpful and like willing to share their work online. So like I was working on a video where I had to animate smoke, and so I looked up like animate smoke, how do I do that? And someone had like a really helpful tutorial on how to do that. So that's just really how motion graphics goes, is like the community is very helpful in putting that together. And also it's really easy to like follow people's work and kind of see their different styles and use their styles to build on your own. And it's just kind of like a really great thing to get involved with. And finally, the way you use it, or the way you create motion graphics, is in Adobe After Effects. So again, part of the Adobe Creative Suite. I think, again, a great investment for anyone really at this conference. And yeah, After Effects is how you do it. So for this presentation, I initially wanted to like pull up an After Effects project and show the process of making it, but it's a little bit too long to like actually do that. So if we have time at the end, I'll definitely do that for you if you're interested. But I figured it might be more helpful to just kind of like give an overview and then give you the tools for that specific part of it. Cool. So before we get back into how motion graphics intersects with journalism and like how the future of that is going, I want to play a couple more examples. So this next video is one of my all-time favorite motion graphics videos, and then after that, it's just a couple of examples of how I've used it in the past. Cool. Yeah. So that's that was in the video, not me. So that's just an example. Is my mic on? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that's just an example of a really cool motion graphics video. I just like that a lot. And it's an example of how you can use this tool to just like really bring things to life and just make really cool things. So the next couple of videos are different stuff that I've made. So this next video is from the Ethicam, which is our student newspaper, and it's kind of like an infographic as a video. So I'll just play it. Cool. So yeah, that's just an example of how I've used motion graphics. That was one of the first ones I made last year. And that's also an example of just like how I think it could be used in high school too. Yeah, it's just ways to help tell stories in ways that are engaging, but also like knowledge and like actually informative. So this next video is actually not journalistic. It's something I made this summer, but it's also using those motion graphics elements. So it's just kind of like to show you the kind of like what diverse skills you'll gain from learning this tool. Okay, cool. And then this last video is, again, something I made this past summer, but for something else that's actually journalistic. So this is just kind of giving you the full spectrum of just like what I've done, just to give you some context. Diet, smoking, and fitness. Now, diet has been a problem in Louisville in many ways since the early 1900s. Louisville Metro has its health department, and it just got a new director.
So I'm Dr. Sarah Moyer. I am a family physician who started with the health department 2.5 years ago now as the medical director.
Redlining was a grading system for capital lending in neighborhoods.
Okay, cool. So yeah, those last two videos were things I made this summer. I was doing journalism, but also just post-production that's not really in a journalistic way. I just think that is something that I like to show because motion graphics has given me like a lot more than I really thought I was signing up for. Because I knew how to use this tool, I was able to tell that story. So this video I just showed you was kind of just like a reel of some different parts of this video that I created, and motion graphics kind of like helped me add things that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So like when that source graphic comes down, that's just like something I was able to do because of motion graphics, and like different tools like when she's in the TV, just like things that I thought would help add to the story. Cool. So now that you've seen, I guess, more examples of motion graphics, and we talked about like how motion graphics is being used, how it intersects. I guess the question is now, why motion graphics? Why should you use it at your newsrooms in your high school, and also why should you use it in your personal life? Why should you factor that into like the things you care about and the things you learn? I think there are a couple different reasons. So like I was just saying, motion graphics is helpful for other things besides just journalism. So obviously I've used it in journalism the most, but I have been able to do like really fun things like that promotional video and some music video type stuff. And I also have been able to work on videos for nonprofits using motion graphics, and that's just something that's been really helpful for me to be able to like just fulfill that community service aspect of my life through something that I really like doing. Secondly, and as we talked about earlier, motion graphics is a great place for online learning. There's so many tools available on the internet to help people learn from the ground up. I haven't taken a motion graphics class, but this one playlist that I've used has been extremely helpful, and everyone that does motion graphics contributes to the online learning atmosphere and is very like responsive on Twitter and on like all these forums, and it's just a great place to be able to get like industry professionals helping you from day one. So I'll be giving those links for sure at the end of this presentation, and again, if we have time, I'll show you like some about actual After Effects and how it's made. And then thirdly, and this is the most important, I think motion graphics, especially in journalism, has a lot of untapped potential. So in the videos that we've been seeing, I think it's used, and it's understandable why it would be used this way. It's used to help journalism be as engaging as possible right now. But I think that the untapped potential part of it is that it can also be used to tell really effective and engaging and emotional stories. Motion graphics does things that video and photo and audio can't do. Those mediums come from real life. Like, you have to find those things. Motion graphics, you get to create those elements and use them to tell a real story. And in a lot of stories, that can be more effective. If you're really trying to illustrate an emotion that's hard to get across in one of those forums, motion graphics is, I think, the place to turn. And even in smaller ways, like that infographic that I showed you, I think that motion graphics has a lot of untapped potential that is just exciting to start learning at a young age. And finally, why does this all matter? Why should we be thinking about where journalism is today, what direction multimedia journalism is going into, and how motion graphics fits into that? I want to go back to that quote from Jim Lair, the guy that I saw during my high school. He said that, journalism now, our job is to help people find the actual good content. Like, our job isn't just to create the content, it's to help people be able to find our own content. I think that it's really important for us to understand how to tell the best stories possible, and now is the most exciting time to do that. And also, from what I've seen, people in professional newsrooms don't really have the answers as to how to use these tools. No one really has universal guidelines for like social media reporting and multimedia journalism, the same way that they have universal guidelines for print. And I think that that's very scary to people in professional newsrooms, but it's really exciting to people like us who are in student publications that are independent from organizations owning us, that are independent from restrictions of time and money, and that have kind of like our whole lives to figure out what those guidelines are and to help pave the future of storytelling. So yeah, thank you so much for coming to the presentation. I have time for questions and anything else. And again, if you want to stay in contact, I have business cards, and I would love to just like help out in any way. Thank you. Cool. Yeah.
Okay, so is this motion graphics strictly for video use, or can you infuse it with like an online publication?
Yeah, okay, good question. So actually, I get that question every time I do this presentation, and I think it's really exciting because that's exactly how I think it should be being used. It depends on what platform you're using, but there are different plugins in WordPress that can like help you do a lot of different things, and most news websites are on WordPress. So it really depends, but there's also ways to embed things in websites where the video is just kind of like automatically playing and it doesn't really look like a video. So really my answer is like, I haven't used it in a specific enough way where I could give you an answer or a tool, but I'd say that it is possible, and it's like so great that you would be one of the people that's like looking into that and trying to figure that out. And it's possible. Yeah.
Is your presentation going to be on your website up there?
Yeah, I'll go to this next slide. So this tiny URL, this is to actually a video of this presentation that I took last year. And you can write that down. That's like a video of the presentation. And then in that video, in the description of the YouTube, there's also a link to like the actual PowerPoint presentation. So just that tiny URL will take you to everything you need. And also, just because we're on this slide, definitely write this stuff down, or even just take a picture of this. Mount Mograph, this is the guy that taught me like literally everything. This is the reason I don't have to go to like motion graphics class, is because he has a playlist just called like After Effects Only, or I think it's called like Summits. and it just walks through the basics of After Effects from the ground up. And he's such a good teacher. Like, he knows exactly, even though he's like amazing in After Effects, he remembers what it's like to not remember how to like to be completely new to it, because it is a little bit overwhelming. So I would say definitely follow that guy, and go to his like Summit 1.1. Like his tutorials are called Summits, and he's just like, you'll fall in love with him, honestly. Like I just loved like hearing his voice and just being like, he's such a great, like, I want him to be my dad. He's great. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
How long did that first franchise you did? How long did that take you?
Yeah, so it's interesting how long it takes. It kind of can vary. I would say if I had to put a number on that video, it would probably be like 12 to 16 hours probably. And it definitely varies on the kind of video. That was also one of the first full videos I made, so I can make it a lot quicker now. And the other thing about motion graphics is, like, to really make really good motion graphics, I think you have to have a lot of patience, and you have to have a lot of determination to like get the best quality content. So like some pieces of motion, I'll animate it like 5 different times before I decide on what, like, before I find the final version. And that's kind of like where the timing of it, like where the length of time comes in, is like having that like drive to really find like where the motion is going to be perfect. But yeah, so it definitely varies for different types of video. But personally, I just think it's really fun. I love like just sitting down and just going into it. And I think that for a lot of people, once you start learning it, you'll realize that it's very fun, and it's like part of it's like figuring out a puzzle, and also part of it is just like you're bringing things to life, like in a way where it really looks like they're alive, and that's just like so fulfilling. It's crazy. So yeah. Yep.
So I'm somebody who wants to pursue like a 2D animation career. Is learning motion graphics, would that be beneficial to learning that sort of thing in the future?
Yeah, I would say honestly just follow Mount Mograph, this top guy. Look at him on YouTube. Again, look at his playlists. He'll have one called like Summits or one called After Effects Only, and just go to his first one and just start learning it. I think if you're looking into 2D animation, motion graphics is a great first thing to learn. And then also once you follow him, and then once you start like following people on Twitter and Instagram that do really good content, you'll start to like just be exposed to other things. So like that's how I found out about other programs I can now learn that'll help with that. But yeah, I would say learn from Mount Mograph. He's amazing. And then also follow these two people. They're also like, I've learned a lot from them. E.C. Abrams is another YouTube guy. He's really just like fun. He does cool tutorial videos, but they're not as structured as the other guys. So like he's a good one to learn if you just want to learn random crazy stuff, like how to make like bubblegum effect in text and just random stuff like that. And then Video Copilot has kind of like his own thing with like a website and tutorials, and he's cool. Yeah.
What's the name of the Apple video that you showed us?
That video was called I think like Design, like it definitely has a better name than this, but like maybe like Designed by Apple, but I feel like that's not going to return. If you Google that, you might not get the video. Yeah, I'll try to find it because I have the link somewhere. So yeah, I'll try to find it. Sorry about that. But if you do just like Designed by Apple motion graphics, hopefully it would come up for sure. Yeah.